Augustus sat, and questioning Lazarus with his eye as much as with words, started the conversation. "Why didst thou not greet me as thou enteredst?" Lazarus answered indifferent, "I knew not it was necessary." "Art thou a Christian?" "No." Augustus approvingly shook his head. "That is good. I do not like Christians. They shake the tree of life before it is covered with fruit, and disperse its odorous bloom to the winds. But who art thou?" With a visible effort, Lazarus answered, "I was dead." "I had heard that, but who art thou now?" Lazarus was silent, but at last repeated in a tone of weary apathy, "I was dead." "Listen to me, stranger," said the emperor, distinctly and severely giving utterance to the thought that had come to him at the beginning. "My realm is the realm of life. My people are of the living, not of the dead. Thou art here one too many. I know not who thou art and what thou sawest there, but if thou liest, I hate thy lies, and if thou tellest the truth, I hate thy truth. In my bosom I feel the throb of life, I feel strength in my arm, and my proud thoughts, like eagles, pierce the space. And yonder in the shelter of my rule, under the protection of laws created by me, people live and toil and rejoice. Dost thou hear the battle cry, the challenge men throw into the face of the future?" Augustus, as in prayer, stretched forth his arms and exclaimed solemnly, "Be blessed, O great and divine life!" Lazarus was silent, and with growing sternness the emperor went on, "Thou art not wanted here, miserable remnant, snatched from under death's teeth. Thou inspirest weariness and disgust with life. Like a caterpillar in the fields, thou gloatest on the rich ear of joy, and belchest out the drivel of despair and sorrow. Thy truth is like a rusty sword in the hands of a nightly murderer, and as a murderer thou shalt be executed. But before that, let me look into thine eyes. Perchance only cowards are afraid of them, but in the brave they awaken the thirst for strife and victory. Then thou shalt be rewarded, not executed. Now look at me, Lazarus." At first it appeared to the deified Augustus that a friend was looking at him. So soft, so tenderly fascinating was Lazarus's glance. It promised not horror, but sweet rest, and the infinite seemed to him a tender mistress, a compassionate sister, a mother. But stronger and stronger grew its embraces, and already the mouth, greedy of hissing kisses, interfered with the monarch's breathing, and already to the surface of the soft tissues of the body came the iron of the bones and tightened its merciless circle, and unknown fangs, blunt and cold, touched his heart and sank into it with slow indolence. "It pains," said the deified Augustus, growing pale. "But look at me, Lazarus, look." It was as though some heavy gates, ever closed, were slowly moving apart, and through the glowing interstice the appalling horror of the infinite poured in slowly and steadily. Like two shadows there entered the shoreless void and the unfathomable darkness. They extinguished the sun, ravished the earth from under the feet, and the roof from over the head. No more did the frozen heart ache. "Look, look, Lazarus," ordered Augustus, tottering. Time stood still, and the beginning of each thing grew frightfully near to its end. Augustus's throne, just erected, crumbled down, and the void was already in the place of the throne and of Augustus. Noiselessly did Rome crumble down, and a new city stood on its site, and it too was swallowed by the void. Like fantastic giants, cities, states, and countries fell down and vanished in the void darkness, and with uttermost indifference did the insatiable black womb of the infinite swallow them. "Halt!" ordered the emperor. In his voice sounded already a note of indifference. His hands dropped in languor, and in the vain struggle with the onrushing darkness, his fiery eyes now blazed up and now went out. "My life thou hast taken from me, Lazarus," said he in a spiritless, feeble voice. And these words of hopelessness saved him. He remembered his people, whose shield he was destined to be, and keen salutary pain pierced his deadened heart. They are doomed to death, he thought wearily. Serene shadows in the darkness of the infinite, thought he, and horror grew upon him. Frail vessels with living, seething blood, with a heart that knows sorrow and also great joy, said he in his heart, and tenderness pervaded it. Thus pondering and oscillating between the poles of life and death, he slowly came back to life, to find in its suffering and in its joys a shield against the darkness of the void and the horror of the infinite. "No, thou hast not murdered me, Lazarus," said he firmly, "but I will take thy life. Begone!" That evening the deified Augustus partook of his meats and drinks with particular joy. Now and then his lifted hand remained suspended in the air, and a dull glimmer replaced the bright sheen of his fiery eye. It was the cold wave of horror that surged at his feet. Defeated but not undone, ever awaiting its hour, that horror stood at the emperor's bedside, like a black shadow all through his life. It swayed his nights, but yielded the days to the sorrows and joys of life. The following day, the hangman with a hot iron burned out Lazarus's eyes. Then he was sent home. The deified Augustus dared not kill him. Lazarus returned to the desert, and the wilderness met him with hissing gusts of wind and the heat of the blazing sun. Again he was sitting on a stone, his rough, bushy beard lifted up, and the two black holes in place of his eyes looked at the sky with an expression of dull terror. Afar off the holy city stirred noisily and restlessly, but around him everything was deserted and dumb. No one approached the place where lived he who had miraculously risen from the dead, and long since his neighbors had forsaken their houses. Driven by the hot iron into the depth of his skull, his cursed knowledge hid there in an ambush. As though leaping out from an ambush, it plunged its 1,000 invisible eyes into the man, and no one dared look at Lazarus. And in the evening, when the sun, reddening and growing wider, would come nearer and nearer the western horizon, the blind Lazarus would slowly follow it. He would stumble against stones and fall, stout and weak as he was, would rise heavily to his feet and walk on again, and on the red screen of the sunset his black body and outspread hands would form a monstrous likeness of a cross. And it came to pass that once he went out and did not come back. Thus seemingly ended the second life of him who for 3 days had been under the enigmatical sway of death and rose miraculously from the dead. End of Lazarus. Recording by Sean Michael Hogan, St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada.